Jax Jones on Revolution Radio with Callum, Scott and Whistle. So Tuesday morning, and today everybody's kind of recovering but also celebrating after an incredible bank holiday weekend. Not only promotion for Northampton Town, which has been brilliant, but also, of course, all of the excitement and the pageantry of the Coronation weekend. And it's great to be joined in the studio by Councillor Jonathan Nunn, the leader of West Northamptonshire Council. And I bet there's probably not many better mornings to wake up in Northampton than today.
It's been fantastic, hasn't it? I mean, nationally, what a wonderful weekend. Wasn't it a tremendous day on Saturday to see the, the whole coronation ceremony, the pomp and everything else? It was done so well, wasn't it? And I'm a bit of a fidget. I don't sit still and watch the telly for long, so I was fiddling there with it on in the background. But the actual ceremony bit, couldn't take my eyes off that. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. So many, the detail of what comes together, including the thought that was put in. I thought the guest list, were people that, actually sort of famous people, high-profile people, but across the whole weekend there's been the inclusion of so many different people. I love the inclusion of the faith thing. A lot of what happens here in Northampton, if you go, as I did, to All Saints Church, a week before the coronation, there was a church service, and that was multi-faith. There was, other sort of religions getting involved. So I love that bit too. So yeah, really splendid. And I watched the concert as well. I thought that was so well done. Wasn't it brilliant? But again, in every detail, I thought, the people that were included, the whole upbeat tone of it. I thought Prince William said some lovely words, and it was right to do something more formal, if you like, there, but it was still in a nice, relaxed way. Absolutely love the drones. Yeah, I think fireworks. I'm quite a fan of fireworks for a big occasion, but I guess environmentally, they're probably on less of a thing, and you could. I sense that was the King's sort of environmental thoughts coming through, but it was so spectacular, wasn't it? Every little detail was absolutely perfect.
Amazing. And I think we did incredibly well in the town centre as well, because we had our stage on Guildhall Road that we were hosting, and the town council and West Northampton Council worked together with the bid to kind of put that whole event together, and people were out in the rain with their Union Jack umbrellas, just coming together as a community and really celebrating the moment.
Yeah, I think Northampton and West Northants really did the whole occasion proud, didn't we? As you say, the town centre stuff on the Saturday was really fabulous. We then had the big lunch at Delapre on the Sunday. That was so lucky there with the weather. Given the weather on the Saturday and on the Monday, really good turnout. I think 6,000-7,000 people there for that. Street closures. I mean, there were a lot of parties where it probably wasn't necessary to close the road, so residential cul-de-sacs, but we actually did a tremendous number of formal road closures. I think there's about 60 of them across West Northants. So a lot of people really pushed the boat out and organised parties across the whole area. Yeah, a real feel good to it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think because you'd made it easier for people to request those street closures and kind of do the paperwork, that's why we saw so many people out on the streets with their little trestle tables, all sat out having their picnics in the sunshine on Sunday.
I think you did right. I think one of the things we recognise is, I mean, a lot of what we do is steeped in law and rule and regulation and so on. But with something like that, you've just got to try and make it similar. And I suppose we've had quite a run. We had the Jubilee not so long ago, and we're kind of getting a bit more process set up for these kind of things. As a number of people around Northampton, West Northampton, said to me over the weekend, let's find an excuse to do all this again next year. So I don't quite know what that will be.
Well,
but I think it'd be lovely too. Sorry.
A lot of people have said we should have something in this country which is similar to what they have in other countries, which is about having an annual celebration of community where people can come together and have an excuse to do that. So our equivalent of Independence Day or Bastille Day or something, that we don't really have that, but a kind of celebration of what we do have here.
I think wouldn't that be really wonderful? Because I think we've seen we've seen a sort of surge in all sorts of things, in volunteering and somehow in communities coming together. Some of this is off the back of COVID, I think. So, somehow there seems more momentum for these kind of things. I remember some of them as a child. I'm even old enough to remember the Queen's Silver Jubilee. That dates me a bit, but quite an isolated thing. I think these days we're better at organising these come-together things, and I think we see more importance in them. Well, let's push for that then. Let's see if we can find a reason, if only in Northampton and West Northants, to celebrate similarly next year.
I had a little Silver Jubilee teaspoon as a child, which I still
you're
have.
Definitely not old enough, are you? Right,
Well,
okay.
not far off, but that was my baby spoon. I had a little picture of
Was it
of the
wonderful?
Queen on.
77, I think, if I remember rightly, was it?
It'd have been about 3. So, okay, right, let's crack on with Christina Milian. And if you have any questions for Jonathan, you can get in touch with us live straight through to the studio on 01604 800 961, or send us a text or a WhatsApp to 07852 961 961. This is Christina Milian now on Revolution. Tim Deluxe on Revolution Radio. And it just won't do. Great to have Jonathan Nunn with me in the studio again. He's the leader of West Northants Council. And this is your chance to have your say and get your point across. If there's something that's happening in your local community that you want to put to the council leader, or just a good news story that you want to make us aware of that we can talk about, you can get in touch with us in the studio in all the usual ways. 01604 800 961 is the phone number, or 07852 961 961 on text or WhatsApp. And one of the stories that's been making the news this week is, I guess this is a good news story for the local community, because in the Semlep area we've received the largest share of funding for initiatives for local businesses, voluntary groups and cycleways to help with net zero ambitions. £5.4 million is coming to us here in West Northants, and I guess that's going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. I mean, isn't it great? I think, we are a large council. Out of the 6 South East Midlands, Northamptonshire and West Northamptonshire, we are large in terms of population. I think we're also really pushing hard on any government money that comes along that might be used. And I mean, there's a variety of different things that that this goes towards. So potentially it's there to be used for skill development, businesses, community groups, help with fuel poverty, helping us towards our goals on net zero and so on. It's a shared prosperity fund is the thing we're talking about. As you rightly say, across those 6 South East Midlands councils, we got the largest at West Northants. It's £5.4 million, which is a decent chunk of money. Obviously, when you start looking at delivering around a number of different programmes, community group, grant funds, etc., you soon burn through it. Yeah. But nevertheless, it can only be good news. And I think it's a reflection. I think we did a really good bid, but I think it's also a reflection as well that in West Northants we deliver on these funding schemes. So the money that they give to people in West Northants gets good results. That's not just the council. Of course, we hopefully play a part, but I think you've got so many different community groups and all sorts of people where we give the government bang for buck. And ultimately, I think that's a reputation you need to build. There are lots of grant funds that go out and then people aren't able to deliver against the objectives and hand the money back or whatever. We spend it, we get maximum efficiency out of it, and that's because of the groups and the organisations around. I think relationships with others like the university and all these sorts of people as well.
I think if it's based on reputation, you've done incredibly well to be the newest council and only been here for a couple of years and already built up that level of trust.
I hope we have. Do you know, it's interesting you use that word. I think trust is really, really important. We're 2 years in now. And as you say, we are a brand new council. There's been naturally all sorts of bumps in the road and things to do. But I think you have to try and hope that people feel a little bit of trust. It's quite natural for all of us to feel a little bit of cynicism towards our local council. But I hope when people see West Northants, they think, well, hopefully those guys are doing their best. They did this, they did that, they did the other. Hopefully we can be trusted. We try and come out quickly with the bad news. You might remember me coming in here. We were one of the earliest councils to talk about the financial challenges last year. We just think you've got to face up to these things. Trust is important.
But obviously those financial challenges are still an issue, and however much money you get given for particular projects, the overall core costs are still challenging, and that's something which is going to be the story, I guess, for the next little while.
Well, I think it was a quick update, because I know we spent quite a bit of time last time I was here, I think, talking about budget, but I think I told you at the time we hope to hit last year's budget, I should say. It ended at the end of March. We're just doing the last numbers. It looks like we pretty much have, give or take. But yeah, it's tough, and potentially a tough year ahead as well. But just like everybody else, of course, with the cost increases and everything else.
Yeah, but obviously for you guys, particularly, the pressure is on to balance the books, because you've got that history.
We have legal obligations. You have to set what they call a balanced budget, where as much money is coming in as is going out, and vice versa. And of course, with what has been, it still remains around 10% inflation. Some signs are sort of starting to come down and so on. But yeah, that is pretty challenging. And the other thing, I think again I've mentioned before, but some of our services are what we call demand led. So my background is in the, in the commercial sector, in the private sector, and generally it's always been the more customers I have, the better. The funny thing about some of our budgets is we know what the budget is, but we don't know how many customers we'll get. So I'm talking about, people who really need help, like children coming into care or adults requiring care, these sorts of services, because they are demand-led. We have to be ready for whoever might come. So that's some of the challenges, along with inflation. But I think we're in reasonable shape.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to chat some more with Jonathan shortly. If you have anything that you'd like to say, get involved in the conversation. You can talk to us via our phone number 01604 800 961 or text us in the studio on 07852 961 961. Music from Meghan Trainor and Robin on the way. Meghan Trainor on Revolution Radio with Mother. It's Tuesday morning. Great news for Northampton Town with promotion to League One over the weekend, which is fantastic news. And I don't know if maybe we should have an open top bus tour around the town or something. Sounds good, doesn't it? And speaking of buses, school buses, big thing at the moment. There's a consultation going on about proposed changes that the council are suggesting could be made to how kids get transported to schools across West Northamptonshire, and the consultation's open until the end of the month. And obviously, Jonathan, this is something that a lot of people have got strong opinions about, and is going to involve the council saving a bit of money in this area.
Potentially.
What are the changes that are being introduced, and what's sort of the thinking behind it?
Yeah, thanks for highlighting it, Chris, because one thing that's really important is we'd urge people to have their say, particularly parents of children who use the service. That said, any changes that come into place won't come into place until next year, and there's a limit to the extent to which they affect those existing parents who already have children using home-to-school transport. Okay. But the upshot of it is the let's talk about cost first of all. As with anything, it's under financial pressure, and it's quite a hefty sort of subsidy that goes into the service at the moment. The cost hasn't been reviewed for about 10 years. Of course, we've seen increase of cost over that whole period, but certainly increase in operator costs with fuel costs and everything else in the last year or whatever. So part of it's going to be reviewing the cost. At the moment, you pay £600. The consultation says that cost may have to go up to £1,000. We're waiting, obviously, to hear what people have to say. We're benchmarking it against other councils as well. The problem when you don't review something is you suddenly end up putting quite a big hike in it. Huge hike from 600 to 1,000.
So that's the amount that the parents have to contribute
towards annual
towards
cost if someone is paying for school transport. Yeah, that's right. There are a couple of other things as well. At the moment, I think in some situations, so for example, if parents choose to move and they move outside they move away a little, which gives a longer journey, we have covered the cost of some of those journeys. We're considering that should be more a matter of parent choice possibly, and also linked schools is a concept by which you go into a school that's linked primary school to a senior school, and there's some review around whether that automatically means that you get the subsidised sort of transport and so on. So there's quite a few things going on there. Alongside this, a couple of things we're doing as part of this review, we want to make sure that where the journey is shorter, children have got safe routes to walk. You mentioned the Shared Prosperity Fund a little while ago. Part of that is about decarbonisation, safe walking and so on.
Because it's a great thing if kids are walking to school, because we should be encouraging that.
Well, exactly. But it's got to be safe, hasn't it? Where you've got an area where perhaps you've got some excellent pavements, and then you've got a short strip which is a road with no pavement, just grass verges. That's potentially dangerous. If we can there find a way of cost effectively putting a pathway in or creating a safe route to school, then that's what we're keen to do too. So it's all in the mix really. The bit that we're not looking at, because it has slightly different policy, is children who are 16 years plus. And part of the reason for that is we're currently doing an overall bus strategy across the whole of West Northants. And we all know it's a real challenge. There aren't enough buses going to I grew up in villages, and I think about the buses that were available then. There's nowhere near as many buses now. It's really, really challenging. If you live in a village, often to get to school or indeed to get to a job or anything else. And the challenge there is the council puts money in to subsidise them. On some of them, you get a brand new housing development built, and the developer is required to contribute a chunk of money to maintain a bus service, but that's finite, and so it might run out after a few years. So some of the bus routes that you currently see under threat are those where that chunk of money has come to an end. You know, the developer has been required, as part of the planning permission, to give X £1,000. That's lasted for 7 years or 8 years, 10 years, and now it's coming to an end.
So the route itself isn't viable in isolation, but surely the bus companies should be averaging out their profits across a number of routes, so they're not just cutting the ones that aren't making money and going for the profitable ones.
Yeah, naturally there's a strong argument for that, and it is, irrespective of the fact that it's now run by private business, it is still a public service, isn't it? I think the line's got a bit blurred on that, and on a number of things, really. You know, similarly, the housing market is absolutely commercial, where private developers are building. Nevertheless, it is a social and important part of our, you know, the social fabric of the country. We have a shortage of homes here in West Northants. Whilst we want building to be in an appropriate place, we do want to see developers move on and get on. So there is a need to feel that there's a social argument that says, okay, I know what you're doing as a private business, but at the same time you're making a social contribution to something that's important. And that your point about buses is absolutely right, and the need to see some cross subsidy from the more successful routes. I think also the bus companies, we'd probably urge them to promote the travelling on buses. Somebody pointed this out to me quite recently. You know, we often get representation from parish councils, for example, when the bus company's looking to cut their routes. In fact, this year, as a last-minute budget change, we put a couple of £100,000, £215,000 out of the council's budget to maintain some of the trips that are done to the north, up to the villages to the north of Northampton. And you know, it's really challenging there. What we really need is we need to see more people use the buses. That's a big part of it. You see a bus making a trip with relatively few people on it. It's an absolute lifeline for those people. But I do get the fact that it is commercial, and it's not much more than cajoling and enthusing that we can do as a council if it's an unprofitable route.
But I think the bus companies have done things, and I don't know if it's the bus companies or if it's a national policy, but there seems to be like a maximum fare now on buses for any route.
£2 maximum thing. Yeah, and I believe that's worked reasonably well to get people on the buses. I think you're absolutely right. You're right to point that out. Let's hope that's been a success and got more people back to buses. Yeah,
absolutely. Well,
but that consultation is on. Coming back to the home to school, thank you again. Consultation, I think, just goes till the end of the month. So jump on West Northants' website. If anybody has children of school age who use school buses, or you have younger children who will be using school buses in due course, obviously the consultation is open to everybody, but we'd particularly urge those people to have a look. If you go on to our website, which is just westnorthants.gov.uk, or just put West Northants Council into your search engine, on the front page there you'll see news which tells you about that consultation. It summarises many of the points I've made, and you can click a link to make sure you put your response into the consultation on what you think.
Fantastic. Okay, we're going to have another brief chat with Jonathan before midday today. Right now, though, here's May Stevens. May Stevens, if we ever broke up on Revolution Radio. We're almost out of time now. This has gone very fast again. It's almost lunchtime. But thank you very much to Jonathan Nunn for coming in today. And I just wanted to quickly touch on the local elections, which have been happening around the country. Not in West Northamptonshire, though. No. So you've got 2 years before the next elections here.
Yeah.
And I guess as a Conservative-run council, you maybe feel like you've kind of swerved a bullet there.
Well, possibly so. As you say, the new councils were formed in 2021. So we're 2 years in. As you said, we've got 2 years. Same with Northants Council as well. That will be after the general election, which is the end of 24. Yeah. And I mean, you know, as you say, as a Conservative and a Conservative council leader, not a great set of election results, really. And we've seen, you know, people who we've worked with in surrounding councils change. So Market Harbour, not very far from us, Central Beds, and to name just two, who we have working relationships with, and so on. I mean, that's the way it works, and you always know. I think as a council leader, you always know you can't, in my view, treat it as a career. You dedicate yourself to it in a professional manner. But then you don't, you know that elections can change things, really. I think you've also got to have in mind the best person for the job should do the job, and if somebody else comes along, they can do it better, So it's not quite like a normal career for me, and I think if you treat it that way, it keeps you straight, really. But no, we lost, I think it was 1,061 councils nationally, lost control of, I think, 48 councils. 22 of those, I think, Labour took on. Quite a lot of people chose to go to the Lib Dems, and you saw other things coming through, didn't you? Greens got good support, and so on. I suppose if you reflect on it, yes, you have to listen really carefully to it, and understand that people are just not happy at the moment.
But I think it's a national picture more than a local one in a lot of cases.
Oh, well, it is. We always get this. Anybody who's been involved in local politics will know, and they'll all have stories a bit like the one I remember at a by-election, taking somebody to knock a door as a councillor had moved away, or I think Cllr had taken them down to the south coast, so they resigned as a councillor. We had a by-election, and I won't use the right name, but I knocked on a lady's door and said, "This is Bill. Bill's grown up in this area, really keen to do a great job." And she said, "Oh no, I won't vote Conservative this time. I'll vote for I'll vote against." I said, "Well, what happened in the general election?" "Oh goodness, I'll always vote for Conservative in a general election." So sometimes they use the council to send a message. By the way, I'm sure I've got Labour colleagues listening who says, "Yeah, we've had the same thing too." We work really hard, and I'll talk about councillors across the whole council, every party. There are so many people on West Northampton Council and others of all parties who work really hard, dedicated to their community, but the national picture is such a huge influence on it, really. You hear it here, you've seen people interviewed and say, "Well, why are you not voting for your local Conservative councillor this time? You're going to vote for another party." "Well, I'm not happy with," and they always list national issues, but that's the job. What you got to hope is, you've got the opportunity to build, if you like, a good reputation, either as a local council by keeping in touch with people and doing good stuff in your ward, or for us as a council, we've got to try and do a good job, look after the money, deliver services, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, this is quite significant, and you can't dress it up in anything other than disappointing result for the Conservatives. We know people are unhappy. It's a really tough time at the moment worldwide. There's sort of recession type and inflation, cost of living crisis, and so on. So naturally, people are unhappy with the way things are at the moment. I think there was an element of that. Conservatives, of course, been in power quite some time, and the whole Liz Truss sort of episode that took us off in a different direction. I have a lot of confidence in Rishi Sunak. We worked with him when the government asked us to become unitary. He was one of the ministers involved, but we've got to really keep on track and deliver. He's got his 5 promises, hasn't he? So we've got to crack on with those, I think.
Well, the jury's out. 2 years to go, and we'll see where we are when that comes around. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jonathan.
It's been a pleasure.
Very useful stuff, and if you do want to have your say next time we have leaders from the council come in, then obviously you can always get in touch with us via the website and on our social media. Let's continue with David Guetta as we head towards the news at midday.